Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this evening, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and it matters. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with tonight's second half. Shall we? So, I've been talking about Dulce and New World Order, Agenda 21, and some other things that were emailed to me in a very large email. And I started looking through that email again today. And I stumbled across two things that were very interesting, and I wanted to share them with you tonight. The interdimensional entities behind the dark agenda that's taking over the world. Many feel there is a multidimensional cause behind the sinister agendas afflicting the world, such as the New World Order. But it is possible not just to sense, but to actually know and uncover its root through first-hand experience. And unless the root is uncovered, its octopus-like tentacles will continue to regrow and find new ways to influence the world, even when several have been cut off. It is difficult to overcome that which we are ignorant of, and by using information both from research and multidimensional experience, we can discover the connections between events in the physical world with their multidimensional source to reveal the octopus right to its head. While research alone gets someone so far, ultimately this is an esoteric matter, as those at the center of the spider's web are multidimensional entities who have awakened in the darkness and have been working on this agenda since ancient times. They influence world events through a specific dark occult society whose members have also awakened in darkness, and thus are able to communicate with them and access the intelligence of evil. These entities work beyond the realm of ordinary perception and thus are discovered only by those who can meet and uncover them in these dimensions beyond the body. What good people are trying to go up against then is not simply the visible outer reaches of the octopus, such as corrupt banking and political system, but the very hierarchy of darkness itself. Awakening in information is good, but what is needed is an awakening in consciousness, so that we can perceive reality beyond the visible five-sense limited experience of life. By doing this, we can begin to access the intelligence of light and thus provide an effective response to darkness. Many people have encountered these sinister entities since ancient times, and today they are appearing in the ever-increasing numbers of near-death experiences, and likewise in other forms of out-of-body experiences, including nightmares, revealing who and what these entities are and how they work. Ancient accounts of sinister extra-dimensional entities. Ancient people have been writing about demonic entities since recorded history. They have been given many different names, such as the Ashures of the Hindus, Tizima of the Aztec, the Shaitan of Islam, guardians of the netherworld in ancient Egypt, Shedim in Judaism, Alu to the Babylonians and Assyrians, demons in Christianity. Many of these ancient people had esoteric practitioners who were able to discover information about these entities and realms beyond the body by using techniques to leave and travel out of the body called out-of-body experiences, just as can be done today. What they discovered became the basis of many of their sacred texts. They understood the importance of awakening into other dimensions as it is part of consciousness waking up and seeing beyond the limits of ordinary perception, and used it to uncover information about these entities that influence us beyond our knowledge and sight. They describe these entities as tormenting people, spreading evil and havoc in the world, and inhabiting dark regions in the lower dimensions, which have been called hell, the netherworld, underworld, the abyss, Sheol. In ancient times, many people today and throughout history have discovered the existence of these beings firsthand by having out-of-body experiences, either through astral projection or involuntary and near-death experiences, as these entities exist in dimensions beyond the body and appear in the process of death for those who go into hell/the netherworld. Demonic figures in near-death experiences, NDEs. While religious texts have been looked at by some as mere tales, the ever-increasing number of near-death experiences are now confirming the reality behind many ancient symbols and writings. A Gallup poll was reported that around 8 million Americans claim to have had a near-death experience, while accounts of near-death experiences in which people go into the light and experience heavenly and angelic beings and places are well known. Perhaps lesser known and admitted to are the NDEs, in which people have encountered sinister entities and experienced hellish regions, and there are many of these as well. Although there are some cultural differences in interpretation, the accounts are similar in retrospective of belief, whether they are atheist, Christian, priest, Muslim, Buddhist, or otherwise. In out-of-body experiences, these entities are also extremely prevalent in out-of-body experiences. A near-death experience is essentially an out-of-body experience. So it is possible to travel to these same places out of body using exercises of astral projection, which obviously does not involve death or being near it. Almost everyone who starts exploring other dimensions through having out-of-body experiences is soon confronted with negative beings that try and thwart their attempts to wake up and see beyond the physical body. This is because people who are able to astral project in a serious and objective way are considered the real threat, as it is possible to use the OBEs to truly uncover who and what these entities are beyond the limitations of physical perception. Many others had been spoken to have encountered demonic entities while out of body on countless occasions. A gentleman has been able to explore them down to their root in the underworld in a lower infra dimension out of body. In the astral plane, these creatures move around and are able to influence not only events in the physical world, but even people's own psychological state of being. There was one occasion a group of people were doing an exercise of astral projection. They cast a circle of light, and when that person came out of their body, they saw a demonic figure looking through the window of the room, unable to get into the circle, but chanting an evil invocation to try and thwart their attempts to leave their bodies. This figure was only visible from the astral, not the physical, yet was nevertheless influencing them in that room and trying to muddy their consciousness with negative thoughts and energies. It was able to ruin the practice for the group involved, but influences like this in daily life can cause strife by stirring up emotions, influencing decisions, leading events and individuals into darkness, evil, and failure. Many people have also unknowingly had experiences with these entities and the hellish regions where they reside through nightmares or night terrors, as in them a person goes out of their body in sleep into the lower dimensions. Many of the monstrous negative entities they may find themselves running from can be real demonic entities. People who are trying to awaken in the light can be shown information in dreams and out-of-body experiences about demons, how they influence society, and who they work with beyond what someone in the physical world would be able to see. But information from the astral is not just limited to demons. It can be about potentially anything. Astral projection and other spiritual practices then become a powerful and effective means to learn how to overcome evil when combined with spiritual work. Going to the dark side. So what these entities are they human, animal, extraterrestrial, or something else entirely? In my experience out of body, these entities are either human or once were. And while this may sound far out, this concept is actually explored in a number of modern myths. Going to the dark side was popularized in Star Wars films created by George Lucas, and this same concept appears in Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. Both Lucas and Tolkien studied ancient myth and religion, and their depiction of supernatural conflict between those who have awakened in the light and those who have awakened in darkness in many ways are quite accurate. It is the same concept that appeared over 2,000 years ago in a famous ancient text of the Essene community, which Jesus was said to have spent time with, called the Dead Sea Scrolls. They wrote about a great war between the Archangel Michael, his angelic hosts, and the sons of light against the demon Belial, his hordes, and the sons of darkness. Today, this same concept has been popularized in movies to form this basis of some of the myths of our own modern society. In Star Wars, the evil Sith uses the dark side of the Force, which is basically universal energy, for power and malice, while the Jedi uses Force in a line of love and cosmic principles. Likewise, in the Lord of the Rings, there are wizards of white magic, like Gandalf, who use their spiritual powers for good, while the wizard Saruman turns to the dark side and uses his powers for evil. These individuals who have awakened esoteric abilities, both of light and darkness, are pitted against one another in an eternal struggle, with each side wishing to either uphold the principles of free society or completely enslave it. This was portrayed in the sacred teachings of the Hindus in the story of the churning of the Milky Ocean, in which the Asuras, the demons, and the Devas, angels, struggle against one another in a tug-of-war of cosmic proportions. Individuals can both go to the dark side, as Anakin did, and also repent and return to the light, like Vader. Demons can appear in the astral realm as human or part creature, which reflects their hideous, bestial nature in which they have fortified the animalistic egos. But demons and black magicians are not silly monsters. They are people who have awakened in evil, and this kind of awakening brings a knowledge of darkness, which can give them an intelligence and power beyond what any sci-fi movie could do justice to. As these films portray, these entities are human or were once humanoid who have gone to the dark side and are working accordingly to the hierarchy of evil to control and infiltrate society. Demonic entities actively working to influence society today. Many of these entities written about in ancient texts are references to ones who have specific roles and work together in a hierarchy of evil in other dimensions. Demons of antiquity have major roles and are still active today, thousands of years after they were first written about, no longer needed a physical body, have awakened in evil. They are part of the structure of evil that extends its tentacles right from the lowest region of hell into the physical world. We have been shown out of the body how they work through dark secret societies, which channel covertly through religion, and are communicating with a very small group of people here on earth who are going through the process of awakening in the darkness. These disciples of darkness are using OBEs to get knowledge from ancient demons who themselves are beyond physical death and are working with an immense evil intelligence on an agenda which is thousands of years old. The key part is putting it down and propagating hatred towards anything that gives knowledge about them and other realms of reality, such as sacred, esoteric, and religious texts, spreading lies, disinformation, and bigotry. They don't want another Jesus or Krishna, or anyone who awakens spiritually in the light, nor spiritual societies that operate for good, who could counter their influence. And they are on a stated mission to stamp them out in the documents of their plans, which have leaked to the public, such as those of the Bavarian Illuminati. They hijack and invert spiritual symbols and even religions, taking symbols that attract forces of light to instead use them to give power to forces of darkness, and at the same time give esoteric knowledge a bad name. That is why so many inverted symbols are now literally pouring out of Hollywood and the music industry. It is important to note, however, that all but a handful of people who are part of the agenda are simply in it for greed and money, forming the structure of a puppet politicians and celebrities, shadow governments, criminal syndicates, massive corporations that are manipulated by the very few at the top of the pyramid to control the many. They use human weakness and defects such as greed, ignorance, lust, violence to entice, control, enslave their puppets, as well as the masses, such as the Sith were small in numbers in Star Wars. So are those working directly with these demonic entities, as very few are actually up to it. Aleister Crowley tried and failed very publicly, because he was awakened in light requires discipline and adherence to certain practices. So too does awakening in the darkness. The number of Jedi were even smaller. Instead, most people are unknowing of multidimensional realities. They have no interest in really finding out what's going on, and their lives are simply determined by where the war between light and darkness is. The war of consciousness between light and darkness. So where does that leave us? Making a decision about where we stand in this eternal struggle, in which our own awakening is at stake. The only way a Jedi can return is if we put their struggle into true context and allow the real warriors of light to do their job. Society has almost totally turned on esoteric knowledge and practitioners, and a tidal wave of censorship is set to wipe anything esoteric off the internet and strangle it on the ground. So long as the Jedi remain broke up and abandoned, while exiled to the far reaches of society like Yoda in the swamp of Dagobah, or Obi-Wan, the old hermit on the planet Tatooine, there will be no happy ending. The world desperately needs people who can use OBEs to get knowledge about the inner workings and plans of evil, who meet the requirements to receive spiritual wisdom from higher beings and have awakened spiritual and psychic faculties. Ultimately, the agenda of evil is about stopping people from awakening spiritually, not just in information, but in consciousness, as at the end of day, that is really what life is about. And ultimately, that is where the war is. And this is another kind of little article. So that right there was an article of multidimensional beings controlling humanity, and kind of spreading their darkness through NWO. This next article is another similar but different, is the alien agenda using Adolf Hitler to do their bidding. When Adolf Hitler spread his message of hatred, genocide, and oppression as having been inspired by a blonde race of superhuman warriors referred to as Aryans, it is assumed through historical accounts that this was simply the contrived mythology of a madman. These same accounts omit representation that Hitler was a member of a demonic UFO cult worshipping cabals and was an apparent UFO contactee by the same extraterrestrial group which Hitler sought to glorify. The Nazis themselves claimed that an extraterrestrial society was the source of their ideology and the power behind their organization. Nazi mythicism, indeed, was reportedly a direct product of cult worship to manipulative extraterrestrials. The Nazis referred to their hidden extraterrestrial masters as underground supermen. Hitler believed in the Superman and claimed that he had once met them, as did other members of the Thule leadership. Some reports also allege that Hitler escaped capture by the United States and its allies with the assistance of these extraterrestrials. Indeed, historical records affirm that Hitler was never found by the Allies. His suicide was originally to quell the masses' concern that such an individual could have escaped to pursue another world war. Indeed, reports suggest that the Nazis were preparing for World War III before the dust hardly settled with their temporary setback of World War II defeat. The Nazis said that their Superman resided between the Earth's surface and where the creatures of Aryan race. Aryans, therefore, in Hitler's reasoning, constituted the world's only pure race, and all other people were viewed as an inferior genetic mutation. The Nazis, under the reported guidance of these extraterrestrials, planned to repurify humanity by committing genocide against anyone who was not an Aryan. Top Nazi leaders believed that underground supermen would return to the surface of the earth and rule it as soon as the Nazis began to racially purify and established the Thousand-Year Reich. The Nazis' beliefs were very similar to other religions, apparently, also guided by manipulative extraterrestrials that teach people to prepare for the future return of supernatural beings who will reign over the utopian earth. As in other religions, the coming of the Nazi Superman would coincide with the great finale of divine judgment. Nazi mythicism indeed earned the support of Christian leaders who shared that Gnostic referred to as influence by demonic consciousness linked to a false god. The Nazi army we have formed is growing from day to day. I nourish the proud hope, and one day the hour will come when those rough companies will grow into battalions, the battalions to regiments, the regiments to divisions, and the old cockade ribbon or rosette worn on a hat as the badge will be taken from the mud, and the old flags will wave again, that there will be a reconciliation at the great divine judgment which we are prepared to face. The Nazis had everything before any other country. They had radar in 1933. They had infrared sensors, heavy water. We had been told a lie after lie in terms of who invented these things. If anyone in the world had access to alien technology, it was the Aryans/Nazis. Hitler did not really commit suicide, as some official historical accounts have suggested. In 1952, Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We have been unable to unearth one bit of tangible evidence of Hitler's death. Many people believe that Hitler escaped from Berlin." When President Truman asked Joseph Stalin at the Potsdam Conference in 1945 whether or not Hitler was dead, Stalin replied bluntly, "No." So even though these articles are theory, they really do show kind of something interesting. You've got multidimensional entities, evil entities, controlling NWO, the octopus, as that refers to them as, or the big bank, big pharma, military, industrial. And then the kind of alien or extraterrestrial controlling Hitler. Interesting thing that Laura Eisenhower said to me when we were talking was that during this up and coming war, that we need to strengthen our consciousness. And that's what both of these articles were about. Which is pretty interesting. So I figured I'd share it with you guys in hopes that you like it. And if you don't, sorry. I did. May the Great Spirit be with us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life.